YouTube Ozzico and the Goat House is back. Today I'm going over 8 blockbuster NFL trades that could actually happen at any time. NFL teams are at the Combine right now. A lot of trades happen this time of the year because they're at the Combine discussing in person with each other about potential deals. So really excited to break down these realistic trade candidates, realistic trade scenarios, and it's kind of trades I think, as football fans we would like to see happen. So excited to break it down. We have videos like this all over our channel, and we definitely have more to come covering free agency, the draft, and more. The Combine starts tomorrow. Each day of the Combine, we'll have winners and losers like we always do, and we'll have a post-Combine mock draft. So we got you covered. Join us, like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter, live news, rumors, updates. Always talking with you guys there. If you're not following our Twitter, you're missing out. Subscribers on Twitter get bonus content as well. A lot of good stuff covering free agency. So follow us there. Links pinned in the comments for anything you're looking for. You can also join our Discord and check out our sponsors, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, Walk the Mock. We have codes. GLD Shop has NFL pendants, chains, like the Cowboys one I'm wearing right now. So check it all out. We'll start with Aaron Rodgers, an obvious one here, and a lot of talk about him going to the Jets or the Raiders. We've talked about both in the past. In this scenario, I had him going to the Jets. The Jets have shown interest in Derek Carr. They are still showing interest. Derek Carr is actually in Indianapolis at the Combine talking with the Jets, the Saints, and the Panthers. But, yeah, the Jets are kind of waiting. They talked to Derek Carr. They showed interest, but they're kind of waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And what's kind of been put out there is that everyone's waiting on Rodgers' decision. And that's usually how it is. The last couple of years, it's been Rodgers' decision on if he's going to demand a trade or not. I actually don't think that's what it sounds like, but I don't think that's the case right now. I think they're waiting on. I almost think the Packers are, kind of want to move on from Rodgers. They're kind of decided on Jordan Love, but maybe a team like the Jets are waiting on that the asking price to go down, because if the Packers are kind of decided on Jordan Love, that decreases the price on Rodgers a bit. In his situation, pricey contract, he could retire at any time. He can kind of play this game every season. All those things kind of decrease his value, and the Packers start to lose leverage, especially if it's true that they've decided on Jordan Love. So the Jets might be waiting on that. Like, the Packers, are they ready to trade him for a realistic price here? Possibly. So the compensation I came up with, which makes a lot of sense to me, is really, under the value of a MVP caliber quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, but because the leverage and because what's going on, the value could drop. So the 43rd overall pick from the Jets to the Packers, which is a second-round pick, and then a next-year pick, which starts as a second-round pick but could turn into a first. I'd say as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't force his way out or retires, if he's playing for the Jets. If he plays for the Jets in 2024, then that turns into a first-round pick. So I think that would end up being a first-round pick, and then it would work for both sides because Aaron Rodgers and his talents, even though maybe he's starting to slowly decline, I think he could still – I'm not counting on him to win MVP, but it wouldn't shock me, blow my mind if he won an MVP again, So he's still that talented, in my opinion, even though he took a step down this year. So I think a first-round pick, which I think that would likely be, because I would expect him to give it another go with the Jets. I don't think it would be, or whoever team he gets traded to. I don't think it would be a one-and-done, but you never know with this guy, So I think that would end up being a second this year and a first next year, which is still maybe a little less than the value you think belongs with the talent of Aaron Rodgers, but given the circumstances, I think this is plenty enough. There's been some talk about him just going for just straight less, no first-round pick, no conditional pick, maybe just a second-round pick. That's, with Aaron Rodgers' talent, again, that and just coming across a quarterback like that, that'd be something. That would be something. But the Packers, again, if they decide on Jordan Love, and it's kind of put out there, then they don't want to be stuck with Aaron Rodgers. They could rework his deal, I suppose, but they're gonna they might get to a point where they almost have to trade him, and when you get to that point, players go less than their value. So I thought this made sense, where it's actually good value for the Packers still, and it makes the Jets feel a little more comfortable. So it's a unique type trade here that I thought made some sense. Moving on to the next trade that I have, we got Jalen Ramsey, which we very recently made an entire video on Jalen Ramsey. Talked about the details on financially, what type of corner he is, where he could go. Talk about fits, landing spots, rank them, and I came away with the Lions being my #1 landing spot in my rankings in that video. And we went over some different possible trade scenarios, and I kind of used one, tweaked it a little bit. This gets actually a little complicated because, you'd think that Jalen Ramsey, being an elite corner, he could very well be the best corner in football any given year. Elite zone corner that could play man coverage, very good at coming up and tackling still, making big-time plays. He can be a lockdown guy. He can make a big play at a big moment in the game. I think he's worth the first-round pick, but the talk is, if he wants a new contract and the Rams are just done with him because they're trying to rebuild, and they could lose a little bit of leverage there, I suppose. So the talk is late first-round pick, and the Lions have a mid-first-round pick, being 18th overall. So it possibly could just be 18 for Jalen Ramsey. I think that makes sense. I think it's possible. Based on the talk, it might be a little rich, a little bit. And then you think about 18th and Jalen Ramsey, and then the Lions get a pick back to kind of, a mid-round pick to kind of equal that value. I don't think the Rams would want to do that because the Rams actually right now are looking to gain picks. They don't want to stay even with picks. They're looking to gain picks. That's big for them because they don't have a first-round pick. They want more picks. They're kind of either retooling or rebuilding, trying to save some money at the same time. Maybe it's next year. Even if it's, they're gaining pick, they stay even with the picks this year and they gain picks next year. I think that's a possibility as well. But 18th pick, it seemed a little rich, not in terms of my opinion of Jalen Ramsey's value, but based on what's happening right now, the talk. So what I came up with was basically 18 for Jalen Ramsey. Think of it that way. It's a round 1 pick there, middle of the first round. But again, it does seem like it's a little rich. So they swap second-round picks. So the Lions go up to 36. The Rams drop back to 55. But even then, it seems like the Rams need a little bit more. I mean, you get an 18th, but then you're swapping and helping the team out while you're also giving them a star corner. You need something else to go along with it. So I put a round 5 pick in there. Maybe it could be a little better of a pick too, but 154 going to the Rams. But at the same time, you are acquiring that 18th overall pick, which the Rams do not have a first-round pick. So there's some value in that right now. And there's some talk that maybe the Rams do not get a first-round pick. Maybe they just get a package of day 2 picks. So I thought about the 2 second-round picks. Lions have 2 second-round picks, going to the Rams possibly for Jalen Ramsey. But, yeah, that's the middle of the second round and the back end of the second round, which is from the Vikings. So is that appealing enough for the Rams? Like you're getting rid of your star corner, and the earliest you're going to pick is still your second round pick. You're not gaining stuff until middle and late second round. So it just didn't seem like maybe it could be both those picks and a 4th round pick, maybe that 3rd round pick. What I realized with Jalen Ramsey, if he's traded to Lions, or really any other team, there's a bunch of different scenarios here. So this one is a little complex, I suppose, with kind of the swapping of picks. You can look at it either way. You're swapping 18 for 36, or you're just getting 18. You're swapping 55 and 36, getting another pick. So we'll see. I do love the Lions landing spot. I talked about some other very good realistic landing spots for Jalen Ramsey in that recent Jalen Ramsey trade video there. So you can check that one out. Let's talk about some receivers. We got quite a few receivers to talk about, and it just, last year we talked about the receivers getting traded. It could happen again this year because there's guys that are potentially on the trading block, and it just could happen again. We almost can see somewhat of a repeat. Maybe not as good of receivers, not quite far off, because you get a talented one here in DeAndre Hopkins. So going to the Browns here, because you have that Deshaun Watson connection there. The Browns looking to get that offense going under Deshaun Watson. They could use another receiver. So for those reasons, it makes sense. Maybe they were looking for more of a shifty slot receiver, perhaps to pair with Amari Cooper. That's a possibility. So maybe they won't be interested in this, outside receiver. It's a possibility. I think they would be just interested in getting all the talent they can get, and then having that Deshaun Watson connection is big. DeAndre Hopkins having that connection, that is pretty big. So the Cardinals also, they kind of might be going in some sort of rebuild / retool. They're looking to get more picks. It seems to be clear to me they're actually open to dealing that 3rd overall pick, trading that back. They want more picks, as many picks as they can get here. They're kind of going in a rebuild, and Murray might be missing for the early portion of next season. So that's really not helping with winning right now. Hopkins trying to win right now. It almost felt like it feels like he's asking for a trade. Maybe him and Murray didn't get along. Not that they were like, it was a super toxic, not at all a toxic situation, but it just felt like there wasn't a strong connection there for some reason. Staff changes. So Hopkins kind of looking to move out. Contract's actually all right, but he could want more money. So I do think, his value, this is where I think his value is at, factoring in that he possibly wants out. The Cardinals just desperate for some picks. So the 98th overall, which is the Browns' third-round pick, going to the Arizona Cardinals, and the next year's second-round pick. So I think his value maybe could be a second-round pick this year, and that's it. The Browns' first pick, they don't have a first-round pick. Their first pick is in the second round. I think they want to avoid trying to trade that, but it could be that by itself. The Browns maybe won't be in on something like this because they're already limited in picks. That's also a possibility, so I considered other teams here. Maybe some of the other teams we're going to have in other receiver trade scenarios coming up. But so since they're not giving up their second this year for a talented receiver, they give up a third, they give up a second next year. So it is tough. Hopkins hasn't played a full season in a couple years as well, so maybe that brings his value down. So maybe it's hard to see them not getting a second round pick or equal value in there somewhere. Because you could argue, talent-wise, he's worthy of a late first-round pick. Don't think they get that, though. But the Browns made sense because they could use a receiver, and there's that Deshaun Watson connection there. And even though it looks like they're in a little bit of a hole cap space-wise right now, they're going to free a lot more up. One example would be restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract, which I can almost guarantee is going to happen. That's going to free over $30 million. So they're actually going to have a decent amount of cap space there. So they go and get D-Hop for Watson there, the duo back together, and then a receiver unit's looking pretty good with Cooper and Hopkins there. Next one is a receiver trade, Mike Evans. And people aren't really talking about Mike Evans when it comes to trade talk at all, and I think he probably should be talked about at least a little bit because the Buccaneers seem to be in some sort of rebuild mode stages, in my opinion. I think the first sign was with the Brady contract, actually, which no one's really talking about. They had, with him being retired, they had the option to kind of divide up that, because it was still cap hits on Tom Brady. They had the option since he retired to kind of spread out that cap hit to next year, which they need cap space, but they didn't want to do that. So that tells me they're worried about next year, the future cap space. They don't really care that much about now. So that was kind of a sign that rebuild could be coming. Now they just cut Fournette. They're talking about cutting Donovan Smith, which people hate on Donovan Smith a bit. He's given up some pressure, but he's still a quality, experienced left tackle. You're getting worse right when you get rid of him. So, it sounds like they could go with like a bridge quarterback. So it sounds like they're in some sort of rebuild. Mike Evans, going to be 30 years old, still a very good receiver. Is he going to be around for a rebuild? Are they just looking to collect some draft picks? That sounds likely right now, and all the receivers are getting dealt. And he's only got 1 year left in his deal. So do you extend a guy like that when you're kind of going in rebuild? Which again, it's not confirmed they're in rebuild, but it really feels like it to me. So where to send Mike Evans? I thought about a few teams. I thought about the Patriots. I like the Patriots a lot. I like the Giants a lot. But the Ravens actually there's a connection there. They hired Todd Monken, the Georgia OC, as their OC. He actually used to be the offense coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Mike Evans was, he was always going wild. He's always productive. So I thought that made sense. They need a receiver. They're going to take maybe the receiver position, that offense, a little more serious now with that passing game specifically. So the Ravens with that, there's a lot that makes sense there to go out and be able to get a guy like Mike Evans. But he's valuable to me still. Very talented receiver. He's got somewhat of a friendly contract this year, but he's going to need an extension. But at the same time, the Buccaneers would need some value to trade Mike Evans, even if they're in rebuild, because they actually don't. They only clear just over $2 million by trading him, unless they wait for the post June 1st, trade, which is possible. Then they clear more, but it's got to be worth it to them. And Mike Evans is still a stud receiver, kind of a game changer, especially for a team like the Ravens if they add him. And again, I like the connection with Monken there, and they're trying to elevate the receiver unit, the passing game in general, if they bring Lamar Jackson back. So I thought Mike Evans for the 23rd overall pick made some sense. And maybe, I sent the 5th round pick back to the Ravens because, again, they do have to extend him, and the receiver class isn't that great, though. You definitely rather have Mike Evans, but 23rd, maybe if it was a little later, then it could be just the 1st round pick. But I thought the Ravens, throwing something their way made some sense. So Mike Evans and a 5th round pick for the 1st round pick from the Ravens. The downside to this is not only that, what most people might think is that the Ravens still have to figure out the Lamar Jackson situation. Yeah, and they do. The focus will be there. But money-wise, they actually can make this work. They could backload Lamar Jackson and still get Mike Evans. So that actually, some people think that's an issue. That's really not that much of an issue there. But just having their focus on, Lamar Jackson, could they afford to do so? But the bigger thing is here, they don't have a second-round pick. They don't have a lot of picks. They're looking to add more picks. Probably. So trading their first pick kind of takes a hit on that. So the Ravens, maybe they wouldn't be in on trading for anybody because they want to not only, they want to add picks basically. So that would be the downside. Maybe why the Ravens don't deal for anybody like this. Maybe they kind of just focus on free agency and the draft and trading back. Maybe they trade back with that first round pick to get more picks. That's a possibility as well. But I did like the fit with Mike Evans and the Baltimore Ravens, and who knows, the Buccaneers could definitely be in that rebuild stage where they're kind of having a fire sale. It's definitely a possibility there. Brandon Cooks, he's kind of been brought up on the trade market for a while, especially at the trade deadline where it felt like he was going to be dealt, and it didn't happen. A little pricey, but mainly the Texans were kind of asking for that second round pick, it sounded like. So teams didn't, the Cowboys were involved in those talks too. They didn't want to do that. But the talks are heating up again, especially at the combine with everyone there, agents, teams, GMs, coaches, things like that. And they're talking, and it sounds like a lot of teams are actually interested. I think the Texans' price maybe has come down a little bit. You would think it has to come down a little bit. He's going to be a little pricey this year, a little bit more reasonable next year. But I went with the Cowboys again. There's a number of teams that could be interested. We heard there's teams from the AFC and NFC that's been reported that have shown interest in Brandon Cooks. Speedy, deep threat receiver that's still got some stuff left in the tank, obviously. But the Cowboys, they were in on Cooks at the deadline, and I think they very well could be in on Cooks again. They need another receiver. I think this is a guy that can mesh well. It's kind of what they're missing. They added T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's kind of a poor man's Brandon Cooks, kind of an outside, not the biggest guy, but speedy separator guy specifically downfield. I think that's kind of what they're looking for. It kind of fits well with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. It's kind of what they're missing. So, third round pick made sense. I don't see it being more than that. It could be a fourth, but the Cowboys picking a little bit on the later side made the third round pick, 90th overall, makes some sense there. So, multiple teams could, the Giants could trade for him, the Patriots, the Ravens, a number of teams. But the Cowboys made sense. We know they had interest at the deadline. The value makes sense here. I think he wants out of Houston. I think Houston just ready to move on from him. So that could even drop the value even more. So could somebody get him for even cheaper? And he's a little pricey. So it's a possibility. It could be a fourth or maybe like a fourth and a fifth. If a team rather do that than give up the third, possibility. Another receiver here, Jerry Jeudy, kind of being brought up a little bit. I think the other guys are being brought up a little bit more. Do the Broncos really want to trade Jeudy, like a solid young receiver that's still getting better? But I've heard that they are looking to add picks. I mean, they had to trade picks away for Russell Wilson, but then more recently for their coach, Sean Payton. So they're looking to add more picks back again, which they got one in between there. They got one back for Chubb, so they're kind of all over the place right now. But they're looking to get picks back again, and a guy that's been rumored more likely to be traded is a guy like Garrett Bowles, their left tackle, who we'll actually talk about right after Jeudy. But yeah, if they're looking to get picks, and they have receivers, they have Sutton, they have Tim Patrick will be coming back, obviously, and he somewhat recently got a contract, and Hamler as well. Maybe they could add cheaper guys, perhaps. So maybe they would move on from Jeudy. So I thought of the Patriots, looking for a receiver. I think more like this. They could be interested in Mike Evans, like I said, or DeAndre Hopkins. But, could roll with Devontae Parker on the outside, Jeudy being that guy that can play inside and out, kind of that type of receiver that they're looking for, that they're missing right now, and a little bit of an Alabama connection with Mac Jones and now Bill O'Brien. So I think that makes some sense there. So Patriots get Jerry Jeudy. I also threw them a fourth round. I had a swap. When I came up with a swap in the fourth round, because I had originally, what is Jerry Jeudy's value? Like a second feels a little rich because he hasn't finished the season. It's been a little underwhelming, even though you can see the talent is there. There's been some drops here and there, but the talent's there, has some upside. But a second-round pick, maybe seems a little rich, but a third-round pick is definitely too cheap. Could you go with a third and a fourth possibility? But I don't think the Broncos would do it for that. I think they would need a second for them to be willing to do it. But again, it seems a little rich. So what I came up with was a swap in the fourth round. So the Patriots kind of come up a bit there. That's what made sense to work the most here, where the Broncos are still gaining a pick, because again, the Broncos, if they're looking to trade guys, they want to gain something here. So they gain a second round pick, and then you see a swap 108 to 135 in the fourth round there. So that actually made sense. And again, there's probably some people that say Jeudy just will not, even if there's a swap in there or something like that, will not get a second-round pick because he's been injured. He's been a little underwhelming. But at the same time, not only the upside, and he's still solid, but got a pretty good contract. You could pick up that fifth-year option. It's only going to pay just over $12 million, like the other receivers from that class. It's going to pay over around $19 million. And that's for next year. This year, he's got a really cheap, obviously, rookie deal. So very friendly contract for this year and next year, in my opinion. So you're helping the Patriots out a lot with that. So I do think the second round would be involved in some way. I think teams like the Giants could be interested. The Ravens could be interested. Some similar teams there. But this is one where the Broncos may just rather keep him, see how he works in that Sean Payton offense and see his upside there. But they do have other receivers there. Maybe they wish they didn't do that Tim Patrick contract by now. I'm not sure. But the Broncos are looking to, it sounds funny because you say the Broncos are looking to gain picks, and it sounds funny because, they got one back with Chubb, and then they traded for Peyton, so that they're giving away picks, and they're gaining picks, and they're giving away picks. They want picks. Well, you had picks, so it's a little bit, they're trying to get sorted out here, I suppose. And then talking about Garrett Bowles, who's actually been, I think Jeudy's kind of been there's been a little chatter, but mainly fan talk. But every time I make a bunch of trade videos like this, I don't really include Jeudy that much. People asking where he's at, so we throw him in there, and I do think this is a realistic trade. But Bowles is talked about more. Maybe that the Broncos are looking to move him because, again, they're looking to add picks. They're looking to move him. He's been injured. He's a good left tackle. Been injured. They free some space with this, and they gain that pick. I originally thought, there's teams that are desperate for tackles. You got a quality one here. Contract, it's a little pricey, but it's all right. It's somewhat team friendly. You probably can get a second-round pick. That's my initial thought. You probably can get a second-round pick. But the more I think about it, he hasn't finished a full season in 3 years. He's coming off a broken leg. He is talented. The contracts are right, but I thought the third-round pick actually made a little more sense. The Titans are a team looking for a left tackle for sure. I think they'd be willing to trade that 72nd overall pick to get a left tackle. They could very well just stay put and try to draft one. They're in a pretty decent spot in the draft to get one, but they might need two guards. Their center could retire. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. That's Ben Jones. They need a receiver, at least one receiver. And they could look to add things here and there on defense. So maybe get something out of the way here, trading for a guy like Garrett Bowles. They brought in Outten, who was on the staff with the Broncos last year. I thought the Jets, too. The Jets actually came to mind right away because they could use a tackle for sure. We know that. They have Nathaniel Hackett in there as well. Who coached Bowles last year. I know Bowles didn't play too many games because he was injured. So somewhat of a connection. I know Hackett wasn't there long either. He didn't even make the whole season. But, that makes some sense. But the Jets got a clear space, and they're looking to either sign Derek Carr, maybe sign Garoppolo, or trade for Aaron Rodgers. That would involve a lot of money. And then with the Rodgers scenario, trading a pick. So even though it makes sense, Bulls to the Jets, there are some obstacles perhaps, or things that need to have to happen first, and then you look and say, can this happen after that? So the Titans made some sense here. I think a fit, a need, they'd be willing to trade that third. And I think the argument against this is, would this make sense for the Broncos? Because you have a hole at right tackle, you got a pretty decent left tackle in Garrett Bowles. Why are you opening up another hole at tackle so you have a hole at both, where you might need a guard, you maybe have to re-sign Reisner. You have other needs on the team as well. You got a new staff coming in, so why are you making it more complicated? Is this worth it for the Broncos? Maybe it would be worth it if it's a second-round pick, and that was my initial thoughts for the other team as well, like the Titans, but Is it worth it for the Titans? I'd say no. I mean, the guy's coming off a broken leg. He hasn't finished a season in a few years, and that's kind of was the Titans' issue before. So maybe the downside of the Titans doing this, do you get, solid tackle, but a guy that kind of gets beat up here and there, which kind of been it's been the Titans' issue a little bit. So interesting one. There's been some talk about Garrett Bowles, though, and the Broncos looking to gain picks. And then my last one, Leonard Williams, his name's been quietly thrown out there here and there because he's got one more year left on his deal. And maybe he was a little off last year. I think he's a hell of a ball player still. But maybe, didn't play like he did the previous couple seasons last year. And the Giants have a lot of cap space, but you can clear a lot moving on from Williams. And then you can kind of focus on a Dexter Lawrence extension, which that's future money. Your cap this year has nothing to do with that, but you also can focus on paying Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, which they can do that anyways because they have cap space. But maybe they... to prefer to trade him for something good now before maybe letting him walk in free agency next year. They very well could extend him because he's a really good ball player. What's he going to ask in an extension? So I've seen his name getting thrown out there a little bit. Trying to figure out value, maybe a little tricky. I think he's a hell of a defensive lineman. So I think the Giants could pull a second-round pick for him. That's an early second-round pick from the Raiders, so a fifth going back to the Raiders. It's tough, though. A third is definitely too cheap. I think a team's getting a steal if it's a third-round pick for Leonard Williams. Even if it's a third and a fourth, it just doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't seem right. So I thought, maybe a team picking, with a middle or later second-round pick and that even that up, that for Leonard Williams made a little more sense. But didn't want to force anything. I like the Raiders a lot. It helps. Well, they need interior defensive linemen. Leonard Williams has been best as a 3-4 end. So that's kind of the one somewhat of an obstacle here is the Raiders ran more of a 4-3 last year, but he definitely can play that D tackle spot, line him up at 3 technique in that defense. And Patrick Graham is there too, who Leonard Williams balled out under when Graham was the Giants defense coordinator, which they ran more of a 3-4. I think Graham could easily make Williams work with their current defense, but he easily could just kind of shift to more of a 3-4 because I think other guys can fit that, like Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. I think those are versatile enough pass rushers where they definitely fit that. And Williams, if they continue to play the 4-3, he can line up at 4-3 end sometimes too. I know Chandler Jones wasn't great last year, so but Patrick Graham's Williams familiar with each other. Williams balled out under him. They need interior players. They need defensive help. So I thought that, and they have cap space too. They can pay him this year, which is expensive, but I think he's worth it. Maybe he didn't really live up to it last year, but I suppose I still think he's a big factor, and they could afford him long term. I think a team that values Leonard Williams very much, where they want to extend him right away, is going to trade. If there's a trade, going to trade for them. But the Giants do not absolutely have to trade him. They got a very solid defense. I think they just need a inside linebacker, maybe two, but an inside linebacker and a corner, and then they're pretty much set because they have good interior defensive linemen. They have good young edge rushers. They got other guys in the secondary like Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson. They could probably bring Julian Love back here. So you take Leonard Williams away, it's like, all right, now we need something else more than just the one corner and one inside or two inside linebackers, and then our focus on the other receiver. So you're kind of opening up another need. So, and it's a really good player here. So it just depends on where this new staff values him. And him not having. I thought the 2 previous years, this guy was as good as anyone as a 3-4 end. I thought he was playing like as a Pro Bowl level, so I still think he's got it in him. But the 1 year with the new staff, maybe he was good, but he's not at the Pro Bowl level. So maybe they're like, yeah, we'd maybe rather have that pick and clear the space. So who knows? That's a kind of a wild card one. I think him and Judy are kind of the wild card ones. The other ones are kind of guys that we know they're being discussed, and it's very realistic, the scenarios that I had, the teams I had them going to. And other guys could be traded. There's always surprises. I really did not think Tyreek Hill was going to get traded. Devontae Adams, there was some talk. I didn't think it was going to happen. There was some talk, so it wasn't like oh my God, like that just happened. And maybe a little bit, actually. But Tyreek Hill was like that. A.J. Brown was definitely like that as well. So there's going to be some of those, and we'll have you covered throughout the way. We have you covered with free agency, the combine. Combine starts tomorrow. Just everything NFL. We got you guys covered. Check out the channel. Check out the recent videos. You won't be disappointed. Like, subscribe to notifications on. That'd be much appreciated as well. It's a must follow. Our Twitter is an absolute must follow because we got to keep you guys up to date with everything going on. My thoughts on everything. A lot of financial, like contract stuff going on there. So check that out. Subscribers get bonus content, and then any link you're looking for, you'll find it pinned in the comments section. It's gonna do it though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.